Hey, this is a blind reaction to TikTok is worse than you thought by Moon. Shout out to him. I'll link the video in the description. Um, this is a blind reaction, unscripted. So this is my first time seeing it, just like you probably. So let's get into it and let's see why TikTok is going to destroy the planet.
It wasn't always obvious. In 2018, an app called TikTok came from nowhere. Back then, TikTok seemed like just another mindless app for teens, where teens and creeps would lip sync to insipid, droog-like songs. But in a matter of weeks, something changed. YouTubers, commentators, the media, TikTok became the new gold rush. To me, the app looked ugly, with a logo that didn't look quite right, but I didn't want to be out of touch. And me being curious, I eventually caved and downloaded it. And just like that, I was hooked. My mornings would be taken up by 30-second videos, my evenings stolen by the buffet of dopamine. I couldn't put it down, the endless scrolling, the constant dopamine hits, I had no control. I'd look around me, parties, gatherings, cafes, everyone was watching TikTok. I'd go online to find TikTok reaction videos on trending. I'd be bombarded by TikTok ads wherever I went. I'd walk around my city to see TikTok logos, graffiti, ads, TikTok.
I've never seen a TikTok ad, but I do know they of course make more money the longer you're on the app. So it's in their benefit to make it really addictive. That's why like the short form content is especially heinous, because you can get like, you can just swipe through 100 videos in a minute, you know? And so I think I think that's kind of like destroying people's attention spans, especially kids who are more susceptible to this. I could only imagine how it's affecting kids like in school. Like they probably can't even like concentrate. I mean, I know kids usually have a hard time concentrating, but now I know it's probably 10 times worse. I couldn't imagine being a teacher trying to teach today's children math.
TikTok dances everywhere. This was revolutionary. TikTok had achieved the impossible. TikTok had taken over the world. No one could escape its secret formula. Instant entertainment, constant dopamine, unlimited content, nothing could compete. TikTok was perfect. Little did I know, we were walking into a buzzsaw. After hours of extensive research, I fell down a TikTok rabbit hole, and the further I went down this rabbit hole, the more horrifying things became. As what I'm telling you today has been ignored by almost all of the media, almost all of the influencers, and all of the corporate elites. And at the same time, governments around the world are beginning to understand the true scope of what's going on. So let this video be a warning to everyone who's downloaded this insidious app, and join me as we cover the raw and unfiltered truth behind TikTok. A question. Do you never want to be bored again? Do you want fame?
Before we really get into this, I think it's kind of funny how like the government, like TikTok is going to be banned in the United States soon, because for years TikTok actually had a feature on their app where it's called STEM. It's a STEM page, and it stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's what kids in China are shown on TikTok. Kids in the United States are shown brain rot content like people dancing and girls shaking their butts and stuff like that, all this crazy nonsense. And kids in China are shown like how to do advanced math and science techniques and stuff like that. They actually did a study. They actually asked kids in China what they want to be when they grew up. A lot of them said they want to be astronauts or engineers. In the United States, the I forget exactly what the kid said. It definitely wasn't being an astronaut or an engineer though. And so that's a big part of the reason I think it's getting banned in the United States. I think China was purposely trying to sabotage American children into basically being useless to society and doing the opposite for their kids. And so yeah, but it's kind of funny because I think Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook kind of do the same thing. And it kind of goes to show that like Mark Zuckerberg, these tech founders are so and they have their hands so deep into the government that they won't ever be banned because they've donated so much money to government, the government and stuff like that, that their lobbying has really had an impact as far as allowing them to have free reign to do whatever they want. But TikTok, being a Chinese company, the United States is automatically banning them.
To not feel left out, for success to come sooner, This is how it begins. Through tapping into your innate biological desires, TikTok has been able to achieve 3 billion downloads. But behind our addiction to this app is something sinister. Because on the back of your constant scrolling and chasing of dopamine, someone has transformed a lip-syncing app for teens into the greatest cyber threat in human history. So the question is, who? Well, to answer this, we need to go back to 2012. Back in 2012, Vine was the closest thing you'd get to TikTok. And whilst Vine was kind of big, most people formed for Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because in this time, it seemed like Silicon Valley was on the verge of something great, unprecedented societal change. We were so caught up with our own creations that we never gave China a second thought. But back in Beijing, something was bubbling under the surface. A creature called ByteDance. Now, ByteDance wasn't just any old tech startup. It was a startup directed by a man named Zhang Yiming, and it was also a startup that was littered with Chinese officials. Zhang's first move with ByteDance was to create a news platform called Headlines. But rather than this being any old news platform that pays for editors and reporters, ByteDance was putting their money into creating the most powerful advanced AI technology imaginable. An AI system more advanced than anything seen before it. This was no accident. In this time, the Chinese government had a strong desire to make AI a priority in the race for global tech dominance. But why was China so obsessed with AI? Why was the Chinese government so involved with working with this unknown tech company? To answer this, let's take a quick look at what ByteDance's AI technology was capable.
I think with the landscape as it is now, companies are investing all this money into AI, but people don't realize, and I've done a lot of reading on this, there's a diminishing return effect on how much you invest versus the return you get from the AI. So like you take something like ChatGPT, right? The last 20%, like getting say 50 or 80% of the way to full AGI, artificial general intelligence, is like, compared to how much you're putting in, you're getting a lot of return for that. Versus that last 20% is extremely hard to achieve, you see? And so they're gonna have to invest probably quadruple or something just completely that doesn't make sense to get all the way there. On top of that, the algorithms are not getting much better. And so the only way they can actually make the AI smarter is by increasing their compute, which is they basically have to turn the world into a computer.
On this news site, there wouldn't be a curated feed or editors controlling the flow of information. Headlines instead use specially made AI algorithms to select and push the news robotically, with the company never having to hire a single reporter or editor. To test this highly developed AI system, ByteDance released the app to the Chinese market. And almost immediately, the algorithm worked its magic. In a matter of months, Headlines became extremely popular in China, with the site gaining 10 million users in just 3 months. There was only one issue. All content that wasn't aligned with the government's core socialist values would be a legal offense, which meant there would have to be at least one editor. That's why ByteDance went so far as to publish a statement thanking the state for its supervision, making ByteDance the first ever AI-generated propaganda machine. It was the embryonic site for much darker things to come. It's 2016 and the Chinese government is inching towards technological dominance. But if they were going to overtake Silicon Valley, they would need to expand their AI technology across the globe. Because back in the mainland, AI proved to be an incredibly effective tool for controlling the population.
You know, it's also really interesting because China usually, like successful companies in China would just copy successful tech companies in America. So for instance, Amazon, I believe his name is Jack Ma. He came to the United States, saw Amazon, took that idea to China, and just made an Amazon for China. There's another guy, I don't know his name, but he saw Uber in 2010 or whatever and just brought that idea to China. It's very rare that you'll see a company start in China and then actually grow to other countries. And so this is actually kind of like interesting because this is like China's first unique idea in a very long time, I think. And so them losing this, getting banned in all these countries, will severely hurt them.
They're constantly monitored by facial recognition cameras that are able to instantly put a face to a name. Now the Chinese are also ranked, given a mark out of a possible 950 points.
I think being ranked is a good thing. A society has to have rules. It forces us to be well behaved.
Yeah, this is like a social credit system, it seems like. I've actually heard of this before. Um, let's see how this works.
It may seem scary, but it's just like that here. We're used to it, and anyway, we don't have a choice.
There's a simple reason for this. By using algorithms, the Chinese government can connect all these data points from everything you do, using your travel records, friends, acquaintances, reading habits, and purchases, all to anticipate any political resistance. It's through these sorts of social credit scores and advanced AI technology that the Chinese government has gained a firm grip over 1.3 billion people. But what if China could use such technology outside of its own borders? What if China could move away from surveilling their own country to surveilling the globe? If they could, China would become invincible. It was in this time that the Chinese President Xi Jinping was making big efforts to grow China's cultural power, which is why Xi Jinping announced that China needs to increase its soft power to give the world a good Chinese narrative and better communicate China's messages to the world.
We have made significant advances on theoretical and cultural fronts.
Xi Jinping announced that, quote, "We should increase China's soft power, give a good Chinese narrative, and better communicate China's messages to the world." And this is where America's had the upper hand for decades. Through America's spread of culture and ideology, America has been able to maintain its global influence. And in recent years, this has been catalyzed by one thing: Silicon Valley. So how could Chinese tech companies possibly compete with Silicon Valley, where a tiny group of billion-dollar companies have almost monopolized the entire industry? If ByteDance were going to have any chance of competing, they would first need to create something groundbreaking, something so advanced, so popular, so addictive, that people would have no choice but to download it, an app to control the hearts and minds of the global population. To take on such an enormous task, China would need to take this one step at a time. The first step was for Chinese tech companies like ByteDance and Tencent to start buying huge shares in.
You know, the reason America has such an advantage is because America is seen as like, it's not that Americans themselves are so smart, it's that every smart person in the world sees America as the land of the free. And so they'll take like Einstein, Elon Musk. These guys aren't natural born Americans. Einstein's from Germany and Elon Musk is from South Africa. But they moved to America because they saw that there was hope to do great things. Like we put the first man on the moon. We discovered a lot of we invented a lot of tech companies. Like the top, I think it's like the top 5 tech companies right now in America are like, they make more money than like the rest of the world combined or something crazy like that.
Social media sites like Reddit, Discord, and Snapchat, because this allowed companies like ByteDance to have a key role in company policy as a majority shareholder. But of course, buying shares in companies wasn't going to be enough. How could China create an app so addicting that it would outcompete every single social media site? To figure this out, they needed to test this technology in their own back door. So ByteDance's new venture would be with an app called Douyin, or in other words, the Chinese version of TikTok. ByteDance tested out Douyin to make sure the technology would be effective enough. And in less than a year, Douyin took over China, gaining enormous popularity, with 1 in 10 Chinese people having downloaded the app in less than a year. All because of this specially developed AI technology. It was now time for ByteDance to go global. The next step for ByteDance was a sophisticated marketing campaign, spending $3 million a day in marketing alone just in the American market. ByteDance would then get celebrities to join in. It would saturate the media and advertising world. You'd even see the NBA signing a multi-year partnership with TikTok. And with the TikTok logo being stamped on every exported video, you'd then see this marketing begin to snowball. You'd see all these influencers on YouTube Shorts and Instagram posting their TikTok videos. You'd see celebrities promoting their garbage on TikTok. But marketing alone wasn't enough. So the next step for TikTok's growth was through the acquisition process.
Celebrities posting their garbage.
In this time, ByteDance noticed that fellow Chinese company Musical.ly was getting a foothold in the psyche of Generation Z. So rather than these companies trying to outcompete each other for ultimately the same goal, TikTok bought up Musical.ly for $900 million. This allowed TikTok to utilize Musical.ly's core...
Bro, 900 million. Jeez, imagine that.
Selling point, the ability to go viral. Musical.ly provided a platform with an algorithm that rewards content above all else. Anyone could post some content and go viral the next day. Because of that, Gen Z rushed to it, allured by the prospects of fame, attention, and quick dopamine hits. Using its...
All Musical.ly did, they had a technology that I never personally used it, but I'm pretty sure It was just like you could post a song and you could lip sync or dance to that song, and that's all people posted on there. I remember seeing that. It was pretty popular like 7 or 8 years ago, I think.
AI technology to learn how to create the most addictive user interface possible. There are several core psychological techniques used to addict you. The first is short videos in and of themselves.
Short. There may be 15 seconds or something like that. 15, 20 seconds. They're short videos. And so it's just that quick, it's almost like a little tasting menu of fabulous. You're trying this and trying that.
The reason for TikTok's initial success is that they took the knowledge companies learned from making catchy advertisements. Advertisers spend millions gathering your attention for up to 30 seconds. And oftentimes, whether you like the advert or not, you'll find they're easily digestible. So TikTok would use this video design, but instead of paying millions to make...
You know what? A reason like Coca-Cola, they actually don't. What Coca-Cola wants is for you to see their ads so much that when you walk into the store, you just automatically think, I want a Coca-Cola. That's all ads do. They don't want to sell you at that moment. Like they don't want you to watch the ad and then you think, I'm going to go to the store and pick up one. But they want you to see them so much that you're so comfortable with them that the next time you go into a store, you're going to see the Coca-Cola brand, you're going to see the little swirling letters, and you're just going to pick it up unconsciously.
Make these videos, TikTok's own users would automatically use all their creativity and talent to garner some hint of virality. Then the most addicting videos made are rewarded favorably for doing so. Once people catch on to which engagement tactics work, these videos are then copied over and over again. The most catchy songs are replicated over and over, creating the cycle of people who are addicted to chasing virality. These creators then feed the masses' own addiction to these dopamine-sucking videos. But of course, not all of these videos can be addictive, and that's the point, because one of the key social engineering tactics TikTok uses is called intermittent reinforcement. I spoke about this tactic in my previous video on TikTok, but basically intermittent reinforcement is the reason why casinos are so addictive, because by not winning every time on the slot machine, you're always excited for the next hit. I mentioned in this last video on TikTok that when you expect a reward after a certain action, you tend to work less for it. Yet when the timing of the reward or the certainty we'll get it at all is unpredictable, we tend to repeat that behavior with even more enthusiasm. And so in the case of TikTok, a video has to capture...
So basically when you see, you'll swipe through 20 videos, not necessarily get what you want, and then randomly you'll come across a video that you rewatch 10 times because you think it's that funny or that entertaining. And then you'll go like, it's kind of random. It's like the next time will be like 30 times you have to swipe, 15 times. And that randomness and that the intermittent reward system, it keeps you stuck on chasing that dopamine hit. Adults have more self-control, but this is very negative for kids.
Capture users' attention very quickly to cause them to watch the whole thing. If the video doesn't catch your attention within a couple of seconds, it's swiping onto the next one. And so after countless videos fail to give you that dopamine rush, you'll finally find that gem.
The fact that you're watching this video means you are energetically aligned with me and aquafarians, but you may know them as mermaids.
And there are real consequences to this. TikTok's design is neurologically damaging. Researchers are only just beginning to understand this. Since Generation Z's infatuation with TikTok, our attention spans have dropped to the lowest levels in recorded history, with our attention spans becoming reduced to that of a goldfish. And it doesn't even stop there.
The vertical scroll, which is what you have on Facebook, for example, you're scrolling up on the news feed. But what this does is if you stop on a video and you like that video, it'll restart that video. So in a sense, you've got a horizontal scroll going on pleasurable content, and you also have a vertical scroll going.
And once the pleasure begins to dry up, you continue scrolling and the pattern repeats itself, leaving you wondering where the last few hours went. And even the small stuff like where the likes and comments icons are is purposely designed so that you can't stop wasting your time on this mindless app. And when you go onto TikTok, you'll see what I mean. The likes, comments, share, and profile buttons are on top of each other. This placement makes it the most accessible for users to click on these icons. But why is this important? Well, this layout may only be saving the user microseconds of their time, but in an app that runs on quick spurts of attention, these fractions of a second hold significant weight. When you're browsing social media on your phone, the screen you're using is very small. As a result, every little inch of that screen is immensely important. since any little distraction or element that takes away from the content at hand has the potential to drive the user away. Wasting screen space is the cardinal sin when it comes to keeping users in that entertainment high. And so with this combination of musically and addictive user design and attention-sucking short videos, TikTok has been able to feast on a generation's goldfish attention span, allowing TikTok to take over the world. Because in just 3 months after its launch, TikTok gained 30 million users. But the real question is, how could ByteDance justify spending almost $1 billion on an app that only sells ads and emojis? I mean, TikTok wants you to think that hosting a few ads and selling emojis is enough to become a multi-billion company, but to anyone looking under the surface, you realize this is far from the truth. To understand where the real money is, we first need to understand the secrets behind the TikTok formula. If China wanted TikTok to take over the globe, TikTok would need to tap into the human mind. Not only through social engineering tactics, but also through their users' data. Because this is where the real money behind TikTok lies. This is why TikTok is now considered a cyber threat. And once again, it all comes back to the TikTok algorithm. Unlike Facebook, Netflix, Spotify, and YouTube, TikTok's algorithm goes one step further.
Okay, has anyone else noticed that your For You page has been a little too accurate lately? It hasn't been things that I'll Google or I talk about. It's been thoughts.
TikTok knows everything about us.
But how does TikTok know which videos will addict you? Well, this all starts to become clear as soon as you begin reading TikTok's privacy page. A privacy page that literally admits to collecting as much data from you as possible.
And what kind of data is TikTok collecting as it runs on our phones? A heck of a lot more than you would think. Images, of course, that users post. But TikTok also collects information about the messages that you send, about the apps that you use, the other apps on your phone. It collects the sites that you visit. It collects your search history. It collects your keystrokes. It collects your location data. It stores all of this and maybe lots more.
And so using all of this data, TikTok understands you better than you understand yourself. It predicts your future behavior. It learns at every second what you want and what you will do. And no, this isn't like Google or Facebook stealing your data and selling off to advertisers. This information is being used to tap into your biological...
I think about those old Nokia phones more and more every day.
hardwiring, and most importantly, to fund China's openly stated goal of world domination. Now, this may sound a little extreme, it may sound exaggerated, but I promise you it's anything but. Chinese President Xi Jinping has a dream, a Chinese dream of global dominance.
This is the Chinese 2049 plan. From what I've read on it, China wants to take most of their funding and basically build the like a world-class military. You can probably guess that they want to do that because they want world domination. They want to definitely be able to compete with the United States and other first world countries as far as military.
任何力量能够撼动我们伟大祖国的地位，没有任何力量能够阻挡中国人民和中华民族的前进步伐。
With this has come some new laws that coincide directly with TikTok. Since China adopted the National Intelligence Law in 2017, all Chinese citizens and companies have been under a legal obligation to help the government gather intelligence, whilst also keeping any cooperation with the government a secret.
And we also know that under Chinese law, TikTok, ByteDance, the parent, is required to share data with the Chinese Communist Party. Required to under Chinese law. That's not a matter of speculation. That's in the law.
And it is required under Chinese law to share user data with Beijing. And TikTok has admitted that it has sent user data to China.
And so with TikTok collecting so much user data, the fact that TikTok is half run by the Chinese government, and now with the passing of this new law, TikTok is beyond problematic. Which is why several countries have been quick to ban TikTok. TikTok, along with 223 other Chinese applications.
See, the best way to take down the United States is not by force, it's psychologically. That's going to be like the United States downfall. It's going to be something indirect, not a war. It's going to be an app on the phone. It's going to be psychological warfare tactics that kill the United States from the inside. If you destroy the youth, if you destroy the youth's minds, you destroy the future of that country. Simple.
Were banned by India.
Indian government has banned dozens of Chinese-owned apps over apparent security concerns. Now, the list includes the messaging service WeChat and the wildly popular video platform TikTok.
The Indian government claimed this was because they were damaging to India's sovereignty, integrity, defense, security, and public order. And this is why Trump signed an order to ban TikTok. In the order, Trump said that there is credible evidence that leads him to believe that ByteDance might take action that threatens to impair the national security of the United States. But with America's heated politics, Joe Biden could let Trump have this legal victory and revoke Trump's ban on TikTok. Although it wouldn't take long for Biden to realize this was a huge mistake. He literally had to admit later on that TikTok is, quote, a matter of genuine concern. In addition to this, militaries around the world have banned TikTok on all personal devices.
Since our last hearing on this subject, the Pentagon, the Department of State, the Department of Homeland Security, and the TSA have all banned their employees and service members from using TikTok on government devices.
I did not know
that. In fact,
that.
the Pentagon even went so far as to say that employees should have their children uninstall TikTok from their personal devices.
Because they could probably spy on the
why does this matter?
Why is parents or whatever
a
from the
national
children's
security
phones
threat?
too.
Why are governments around the world beginning to think that TikTok is the biggest cyber threat of the modern era? Well, stick with me here, because we're going to need to radically change the way you've been seeing TikTok.
The day is coming when the politicians realize that these social media platforms are picking the next president, the next congressman. They're literally picking.
This is where true power in the modern day lies.
Why do you think Elon Musk bought Twitter?
Because the people who control the algorithms are the people rewiring your brain. They are controlling the spread of information. They program the culture. And with TikTok now being the most downloaded app for several consecutive years, the results are becoming apparent.
I'm vaccinated, caffeinated, and freshly masturbated.
On the Chinese version of TikTok, all videos seen as degenerate by the Chinese government are actively removed. And yet at the same time, the algorithm promotes videos of hardworking, everyday people sharing their life and work accomplishments. As you could expect, these videos are generally wholesome, upbeat, and positive, with there being a literal section on the Chinese TikTok called Positive Energy to promote the Communist Party. But in the West, TikTok promotes the exact opposite. On our version of TikTok, we're bombarded with endless insipid videos of girls shaking their ass to music, where we become obedient, placid consumers slumped open in front of screens. And this trend couldn't be better summed up with the rise of OnlyFans. In recent years, the rise of OnlyFans has been catalyzed by the wave of TikTok videos of OnlyFans models alluring desperate, atomized lonely simps to fork over the hard-earned cash for a virtual girlfriend experience. Top OnlyFans creators have spoken out about how TikTok has enabled them to become these hyper-affluent online stars.
So today, we are going to be going over how you can use TikTok to get...
In China, they idolize astronauts and engineers, and in America, we idolize people that do TikTok dances.
fan subs, okay?
I think
Oh yeah, and OnlyFans girls.
like the main people on OnlyFans are roughly earning the same. I think at the moment it's like $1 million a month.
This phenomenon wouldn't be happening anywhere near as quickly if not for
dyeing
TikTok,
your hair and
where
acting like an
TikTok is
anime
catalyzing this wave of
Ridiculous.
desperate simps to hand over the money to these people who influence their everyday lives. And this became very apparent when a Wall Street Journal investigation on TikTok found that when you said you were 13 years old and searched for OnlyFans on the app, the algorithm would bombard you with videos about adult entertainment and drugs. The power TikTok yields over the younger generations is becoming more and more apparent. People are starting to see that through TikTok's AI technology and sophisticated algorithms, TikTok is able to create trends that radically influence the lives of so many in Generation Z. And what's scary is that so many of TikTok's core audience are barely even adults. TikTok users are being influenced into emulating these trends that are highly toxic and polluting to society. But of course, these trends are manifesting things far worse than degenerate behavior. The spread of political disinformation and infiltration of Chinese propaganda is now a serious concern to all of us. This first became apparent on the Western version of TikTok when
It's crazy how fast things change, because I asked my younger cousins, like, hey, you guys, if you need to learn something or you need to figure out how to do something, just look it up on YouTube. And they're like, YouTube? You mean TikTok? They look up everything on TikTok. TikTok is Google, YouTube, it's texting, it's everything to them. It's actually insane.
Pro-Hong Kong posts, anti-CCP posts, pro-Tibet content, and anything spreading awareness of the persecution of Uyghur Muslims was all removed. And this concern takes a further serious turn in light of recent reports that Zhenyu Data, which has reported links to the Chinese military and intelligence networks, has collected personal details of about 2.4 million people outside of China, with pretty much all of this data being sourced from TikTok. The former editor of the Hong Kong Economic Journal wrote in a column that TikTok is reaching deep into offices and homes, shaping how Americans understand real-world events. He went on to explain that while China's move to establish physical footholds around the world was easy enough to recognize, China's quote soft power ambitions have been much less noticed until recently, where China is using highly developed AI technology and powerful algorithms to erode free speech and Western culture. It's for this reason why ByteDance has pledged to hire 10,000 sensors to identify and block anti-government content. Now, I already know that some of you will think I'm fear-mongering, but when you look into China's history and current political motives, you start to realize how daunting the situation truly is.
China is also notorious for using its big tech companies to track and predict the behavior of its own citizens, as seen in this 60 Minutes report from last year. China's stated goal is to become the world leader in artificial intelligence by 2030. Senator Hawley fears China is doing the same thing here. Just last February, the Department of Justice charged 4 Chinese military hackers with stealing records from the credit reporting agency Equifax, affecting 145 million Americans, almost half the country. China has been caught hacking the second largest American health insurer, the agency that stores information about all government employees, even records from the Marriott hotel chain. Hawley says TikTok is just
if you have
the friendly
information, if
face
you have
of
more
Chinese
information,
data
you have more
harvesting.
power.
So what would the Chinese Communist Party do with all this information?
Build dossiers, build files on every American who they can get their hands on. We could ask the same question about the Equifax breach.
They have
would
numbers above
the Chinese
their heads.
government be
That's
interested
like, wow.
in the financial history of hundreds of millions of Americans? What are they going to do with that? Well,
I mean, is it like if you're an American, you're born with a social security number, though? That's kind of like a number, but I mean, it follows you around, but not literally. It doesn't literally follow you around through cameras and everything. That's kind of insane. I don't think so, at least. Who knows what the NSA has going on?
clearly, they thought it was very, very useful.
But when you look at Xi Jinping's admiration for Mao, it all begins to make sense. During the Communist Revolution, Mao became infamous for conquering the countryside to capture the cities. This method was used not only for Mao's Communist Revolution, but also for Mao's dream of world domination, where the world's most developed countries were seen as the cities and the world's less developed countries were the countryside. This is why in recent years, China has gained a strong foothold across Africa and the Middle East. And now the next frontier is to gain a strong foothold in the global culture. Because if you can control the culture, you control the population. And as Xi Jinping declared, it is time to, quote, dare to draw the shining sword. So while the West becomes addicted to TikTok, where the West has their attention spans reduced to that of a goldfish, where people can't go 5 minutes without checking their phone absorbed by TikTok degeneracy, where we are having our brains literally rewired, China is now training their youth to prepare for war.
压迫奴役我们 谁妄想这样干，必将在14多亿中国人民用血肉铸成的钢铁长城面前。
And today, this process is being catalyzed by Xi Jinping's Rejuvenation of the Nation project, which entails the banning of effeminate sissy men on TV, banning excessive video game usage, teaching children.
I think when you try to control people that much from such a young age, I think it literally impacts their brains where they can't really think outside the box though. Like they can only think within inside this small box that China built, whereas in America, that's not there. Therefore, we have more innovation happen.
Xi Jinping's school of thought, teaching children how to use military equipment and having schools have distinct masculine and feminine school curriculums. And today, it is now mandatory for Chinese students to read The Art of War. And as you'd expect, this has come with rampant military propaganda.
就要舍弃舒适安逸。
So while the West is swamped by visual diarrhea of grotesque TikTok videos promoting crime, degeneracy, OnlyFans, and the CCP, the Chinese are trained to become stoic with a warlike spirit inoculated to degeneracy. This stark contrast between the Chinese version of TikTok and ours serves to highlight how effective TikTok's AI technology is in manipulating the masses. Psychological weapons like TikTok have been used throughout history, from the Persians using cats as a psychological tactic against the ancient Egyptians, to Alexander the Great enforcing Greek culture against his opponents, to the British and using their global media networks to control the narrative of World War I. These psychological experiments have always been hidden away and more often than not, slip by under the public's noses. But now in our current Cold War, these tactics have become more and more advanced. And right now, the most dangerous psychological weapon we face is TikTok. According to US military analysts, attacking the enemy's psyche is a key part of China's military strategy. The Chinese stratagems established by Sun Tzu in The Art of War was the foundation for this form of warfare, so it shouldn't be any surprise why The Art of War is mandatory reading. But then this all begs the question, why is China going to all of this effort? All the government employees, all the high-tech algorithms, all the social engineering, all the spying. Why is China so desperate to influence Western culture? Well, like all psychological weapons, there's only one reason for their usage: to destroy the enemy.
I actually read The Art of War. I don't know if they like changed the American version or the English version of it, but it wasn't really all that mind-blowing to me. I mean, it was like old school military tactics from like 1,000 years ago in there.
Before I began making this video, TikTok's growth was never obvious. TikTok seemed like an anomaly, because somehow, in just a matter of months, I went from never knowing TikTok to seeing my friends, family, and self all become enveloped by its algorithm. Back then, we were in blissful ignorance, ignorant to a force that has been brewing for decades, a brew now reaching its boiling point. Since the Cold War, the idea of World War III was always thrown around. Throughout this time, civil wars, skirmishes, propaganda all created the sense of uncertainty. But this feeling was never existential. Our enemies were always the underdogs. They were poorer with lower grade equipment, they had no influence on mainstream culture, they were just this hidden, mysterious force, far from the clutches of regular life. And when this tense time finally came to a close in 1991, people felt liberated. Like the threat of World War III was really just a fantasy after all. It was something to talk about for fun, but never an idea to be taken too seriously. But yes, there were threats from the Middle East, Russia, and North Korea, but it was never anything we couldn't handle. At the same time, we fueled China's growth. We bought their cheap products, their materials, and their lies. In just a matter of decades, China went from being a third world country with a GDP of 90 billion to having a GDP of $12 trillion, a number now fast overtaking the United States. This growth has never been seen before in history. Admittedly, we knew this was coming, but none of us had any real reason to be concerned. At least, we didn't think there was. China's just that place we make our iPhones, we told.
I mean, there's so many people in China. Like, there's like 1.5 billion people in China. So even though per capita they're not making that much, they make up for it with just the sheer number of people. Compared to America, we only have like, I think, 340 million people. They have 5 times as many. It's pretty crazy.
Ourselves. So over the years, we shipped off our entire economy to China. Banking moguls on Wall Street propped up the Chinese economy with billions in investments. Elected officials in the UK did their part by selling out the country's core infrastructure and national energy grid to China. Talking heads in Washington did their part by telling the public that the real threat to the West was Putin and his army of Macedonian troll farms. And us? We bought into China's surveillance technology and downloaded TikTok en masse. Because we were in our own little bubble. Our main concern was celebrities.
Yes, Russia and Putin and not China.
Crap.
Political scandals.
Orange man bad.
Orange man bad.
Orange man. Orange man.
And cheap hedonistic pursuits. But like any bubble, there was always a burst, and our burst came in 2020.
It's always the people that you underestimate that can cause you the most damage.
From the very beginning, it was never about
TikTok. We're so worried about
TikTok
Russia
is just a
and
means
Putin.
to an end, a tool.
China's over there building
all the TikTok
power.
dances, TikTok ads, all
Trying
the
to
lip
take over the
syncing. It was
universe.
a facade for something sinister, something greater, something known as the 2049 plan. Now, what does this entail? Well, as you can imagine, it's not something to be taken lightheartedly. China's push for world domination has been government policy for the last 50 years and is embodied within the Chinese spirit. For decades now, China has manipulated us into believing that China was just another capitalist state, dissolving its ideological ties to Marxism. But this couldn't be any further from the truth. China's intent has been to acquire as much money, physical power, and technological control as possible. And China has gained the money, China has gained the physical power, and now China is controlling technology. And so it's no coincidence that just in line with the 2049 plan, TikTok suddenly took over the psyche of millennials and Generation Z. And that's the genius behind all of this. China is engaging in a war and we didn't even realize we were a part of it. China is taking over the world economically. China is taking over the world militarily, secretly building up its army reserve.
Top U.S. military officer General Mark Milley provided the first official U.S. confirmation of what he called a, quote, very concerning Chinese hypersonic weapons test that military experts say appears to show Beijing's pursuit of an Earth-orbiting system designed to evade American missile defenses.
China's now got the largest navy and is training its youth to become warlike robots. China has infiltrated the West with countless spies that have slept with the heads of the national security.
A bombshell new report says...
The United States, we invented the first atomic bomb, right? The first nuclear bomb. Whatever China's building, I'm telling you now, the United States probably has thought 50 steps ahead. I mean, the United States probably has stuff that you would never even think of. I mean, we have a government agency dedicated to things like that called DARPA. I'm telling you, anything that China has, I could pretty much guarantee America has it.
A suspected Chinese spy targeted California politicians. One of her biggest targets was Bay Area Representative Eric Swalwell.
China is taking over the universities and schools across the West, and now China is taking over the culture. It took until 2020 when the bubble burst did we catch on to what was going on. We had been played. A sudden novel virus emerging from China, a sudden militarization of China's military, a sudden realization of the national security threat TikTok posed. We were finally confronted with the truth. It has taken until today when governments and elites are beginning to wake up to this dawning realization that World War III is no longer a fantasy. Our governments, having been hesitant to even consider the thought of banning TikTok, are now realizing the grave danger we are in. China is currently telling its military to prepare for war. China is taking foreign hostages within its own country. China is rapidly building up its military. China is developing AI technology never seen before in the West. And China is now not only engaging in skirmishes with our allies, but is now preparing for a full-blown war with Taiwan, sending over more than 150 fighter jets to surround Taiwan. As a last resort, our governments have joined a pact to begin countering China's preparation for war. But perhaps it's too late. With our society more divided than ever, with our politicians weaker than ever, with our youth more controlled than ever, when you connect all these dots, you start to realize where the real wealth behind TikTok lies. It lies in our addiction. It lies in our shortened attention spans. It lies in our own demise. TikTok allows China to gain vast sums of money from playing on our own psychology, promising you that dopamine hit, that dream, that attention, dangling it in front of you like a carrot on a stick, disguised as an innocent little app. But there are those of you that are concerned with what's going on, those of you who care about your privacy, those of you who care about your attention, those of you who understand the other side. And so to those of you who feel this way, I feel the need to remind you to delete TikTok. Because if we want a high quality future, we must reject our low quality.
If you thought this video was entertaining or fun, then subscribe and thumbs up if you enjoyed it, or thumbs down if you hated it. Feel free to leave a long essay in the comment section. I will read it. Until next time,